So with the original Godzilla series, you'll tend to notice a pattern when it comes to the movies. They usually come in pairs. We had the first two movies in black and white. The next two were versus movies where Godzilla fought another monster one-on-one. And now we're in the second film of the two Ghidorah movies, where King Ghidorah is introduced and is the central focus. Invasion of the Astro-Monster was released in 1965 in Japan under the title War of the Monsters, and in America it was known as simply Monster Zero. Although when I was growing up on VHS and TV, it was known as Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. So the movie opens up in the year 1960X, where a new planet has been discovered just on the other side of Jupiter called Planet X. Two astronauts, Fuji and Glenn, played by Akira Takarada and American actor Nick Adams, are sent over to Planet X, and it only takes them a couple hours to get there. Pretty fast spaceship, I gotta say. So they arrive to Planet X, but they notice that there are footprints on the surface. Soon enough, they find out that the planet is indeed inhabited by aliens that pretty much look like humans, but they are forced to live underground because they constantly are visited and attacked by a creature known as Monster Zero, or at least that's what they call the monster, because it ends up being King Ghidorah. So the aliens ask to borrow Godzilla and Rodan to bring to Planet X and fend off King Ghidorah, the same way they teamed up with Mothra to defeat King Ghidorah in the last movie. So Earth agrees, but both Fuji and Glenn, mainly Glenn, are a little suspicious about the motives of the aliens because they seem a little too nice. You know something doesn't quite add up. You know something has to go bad eventually. So the aliens offer them a cure for cancer in exchange for bringing Godzilla and Rodan to fight off King Ghidorah, which sounds like an awesome deal, but when they return to Earth and play the tape that they think is the formula for the cancer cure, it's pretty much a tape that says, "You are now all our slaves. We will take control of this planet and make it a colony of Planet X." And it's at this point you're like, okay, the world makes sense again. Now it's time for humanity to band together and try to face off against the aliens of Planet X, who the whole time had King Ghidorah under their own control and have taken control over Godzilla and Rodan. Fun. Now, when I reviewed King Kong vs. Godzilla, I mentioned that there are two things that studios will usually do when they've officially given up on ideas. The first is do a big crossover, something in the vein of Freddy vs. Jason or Alien vs. Predator. The second one is take your character in outer space, like with Jason X or Leprechaun in Space. But I actually do have a slight defense for this one, because this is actually a really good movie. Godzilla is only in space for about 5 minutes, perhaps, and then after that, he's on Earth for the rest of the movie. And also, Toho exploring the concept of aliens and intergalactic travel is nothing new. During Godzilla's hiatus in between Raids Again and King Kong vs. Godzilla, they made a lot of movies that were set in outer space. The Mysterians, Battle in Outer Space, Gorath, a movie that I haven't reviewed myself, but that is clearly an outer space adventure film. So Toho is no stranger to this kind of genre. It's just only a matter of time that they crossed their space adventure movies with Godzilla. And it's not as good as Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, but it is another groundbreaking Godzilla movie in its own way, because it's the first Godzilla movie where we are fully introduced to the concept of aliens in Godzilla movies. And it's got all the cheesy science fiction action that you come to see. You got the models of UFOs, you could easily make them out of paper plates. You got these elaborate costumes for the aliens. You have the really cheesy looking production design for Planet X. But one thing that I gotta say about the production design that really makes this incredible is the lighting. When we first see the underground sets for Planet X, we see Akira Takarada's character walking around, but they do so many imaginative things with the lighting. They dim the lights on all the sets to where it's only on Akira Takarada, and then the lights will come back on to reveal another part of the set or reveal some other actors. It's really clever and inventive for 1965. Just watch the movie and you'll see all the really neat lighting tricks that they do. And speaking of your actors, Akira Takarada and Nick Adams actually do have great chemistry with each other, despite the fact that they're they're both speaking in their native language. Because Nick Adams is the only professionally trained American actor in this movie, and the first time an actor from the United States is actually in a Godzilla movie, he speaks in English, so in the American version, he's not dubbed over. And the person you have to thank for that is Henry G. Saperstein. Henry G. Saperstein was a producer who was responsible for a lot of the more tolerable releases of Godzilla films, and with Invasion of the Astro-Monster, this was actually a co-production between his company, UPA, and Toho. They also co-produced Frankenstein vs. Baragon, which also starred Nick Adams, and War of the Gargantuas, which starred Russ Tamblyn from West Side Story. I've already reviewed those two movies, so you can go check out those reviews on my channel. But these two actors actually have really good chemistry, and Nick Adams is actually really good in this role. When you see a lot of American actors in these Godzilla movies, at least before this one, they're very terrible. They're not professionally trained like American actors are in America, and some of the delivery for their dialogue is awful. If you watch the original Japanese version of King Kong vs. Godzilla and watch the crew of the Seahawk deliver their lines, it's laughable. But Nick Adams does have a lot of good charisma, and the banter that he has with Akira Takarada is pretty fun. Then you got the Akira Ifukube score. I sound like a broken record every time I talk about this because, again, it's another great score, but one thing that I really want to elaborate with the score here is that he uses a lot of piano and clarinet throughout the whole movie. When our characters first touch down onto Planet X, the score is kind of ominous, and it kind of sounds like the score that the Sherman Brothers did for the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, at least when you finish the ride, and it has that really low sounding version of the Pirates of the Caribbean theme song. That's kind of like what Akira Ifukube's score is in this movie, just really low, ominous. It fits beautifully. And then, of course, we have the iconic Monster Zero March, which is actually the final rendition of a theme that has been used in many movies beforehand. It was first heard, even if it was slightly modified and shortened, in the original Godzilla as the theme for the Japanese military, and then in Battle in Outer Space, it was altered again to be the battle theme, and here it's perfected as the Monster Zero March. It's triumphant, it's epic. Next to the Godzilla theme, this is my favorite Akira Ifukube theme. Then obviously you've got a lot of the great monster action and destruction scenes. This is the only movie where Godzilla is actually fighting on another planet and not on Earth. Their first battle is actually pretty short, but it's still entertaining to watch, and it leads to one of the more iconic moments in all of Godzilla, and one of the points where the series really started to take a turn to be more child-friendly. And that's the victory dance that he does once he's defeated King Ghidorah. And everyone during the production of this film was against it, except special effects director Eiji Tsuburaya. He was the one who kind of wanted to humanize the monsters more, so I guess he got the final word and put it in the movie, even if Ishiro Honda was against it, even if Haruo Nakajima was against it, he still put it in the movie. But then again, as much as I love Eiji Tsuburaya and his work, he is the same guy that looked at the camera mistake in Godzilla Raids Again, where Godzilla and Anguirus were just hyperkinetic in terms of the action, and went, yeah, that's good. Keep it in the movie. Now, to get back to the characters, one actress that I really forgot to mention is Kumi Mizuno, who plays one of the aliens from Planet X and Nick Adams' love interest, Miss Namikawa. And she is another example of why the women in Ishiro Honda's Godzilla movies are some of the more important characters, because she's kind of the drive that causes things to go south for the aliens. Without her actions, mankind would not have figured out how to stop the monsters, destroy the aliens, and save the Earth. And Kumi Mizuno is just one of the most iconic actresses within Toho's original run of science fiction. Even though this is her first time in a Godzilla movie, she was in Gorath and she was in Matango, so this is not her first time around the block. So I don't have much else to say about this movie. If I had any negatives, and they're just more like warnings, there is a little more focus on the science fiction elements with the aliens and all the spaceships rather than monster action, because this movie does have a lack of monster action, and unfortunately the human subplot is not as strong as in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, so you can be a little bored at points, but once we get into that big finale where the monsters are running loose all over Japan and the military has to stop them, and once we get to that big final showdown between Godzilla, Rodan, and Ghidorah, it's a lot of fun, even if the fight sequences are not as grand as in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. It's pretty much the same thing, but without Mothra. Mothra was originally going to be in this movie, but they cut her out, whether it was for budget concerns or they didn't want to repeat Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which they could have done some clever things if they had kept in Mothra, because you could have brought back the twin fairies, they could have been suspicious about the aliens from Planet X right from the start. Mothra could be in adult form and not a larva, and she helps lead the attack against humanity to defeat King Ghidorah and get Godzilla and Rodan out of mind control. You could have done some creative things with Mothra, but with the movie that we have here, it's definitely worth seeing in your lifetime. It's one of the more enjoyable Godzilla movies. Even if there's not a lot of monster action going on, I can just watch this movie for the score, the neat production design, and all the creative lighting tricks that they do within the sets for the aliens on Planet X. Now, in terms of its US release, the only thing that you might be asking, why is it called Monster Zero? What is Monster Zero to begin with? Well, Monster Zero is pretty much King Ghidorah, but it's not a tease like when they called Mothra vs. Godzilla, Godzilla vs. the Thing. Because once we first hear about Monster Zero in the movie, the commander of Planet X suddenly says, "I will show you Monster Zero," and then they obviously show it's King Ghidorah right away, and the commander says, "On Earth, you call him King Ghidorah. We number everything here, so that's why he's called Monster Zero." And then another interesting thing is that in the Japanese version, the aliens are actually speaking their native language on Planet X. Those scenes are cut from the American version, which I gotta warn people, if you're watching this movie and you watch it through Filmstruck, Filmstruck has the print of the Japanese version, but the audio is from the American dub. So the scenes with the aliens speaking in their alien language is still in this print, but the rest of the movie is dubbed over in English. So that's a little weird. If you want a little more authenticity, either find the DVD or wait until Criterion Collection puts out their physical copies, which maybe could include the US and Japanese versions, the way the classic media DVDs did. Invasion of the Astro-Monster, a really good movie, really fun. Not as good as the last one, though. That's my review for Invasion of the Astro-Monster. Tomorrow's movie is going to be the first Godzilla movie directed by Jun Fukuda, Ebirah Horror of the Deep. And this is going to be the first of the 2 Godzilla movies that take place on an island. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, if and when you've seen it. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.